Okay, if you go back to slide 4, you will see a copy of what that looked like. On the top half of that image, you see a lament for Dr. Rose and then the word censored diagonally across that space. Let's go back to where we were. So we were with dogs in North Carolina. So here's a quote, a continuation from that quote from the actual case. In addition to this conduct, Dickey mailed the censored editorial to a Montgomery newspaper. Dickey's conduct in acting contrary to the advice of the faculty advisor and of President Adams was termed willful and deliberate insubordination. This insubordination is the sole basis for his expulsion and or suspension. Okay, just because he did not follow Adams' rule, he was expelled from Troy University. Moving on to slide 10. Of course, we had to have precedents in that case, and one of the precedents was Dixon v. Alabama State Board of Education from 1961. So this is a case very, very close. It's in the same physical, district. It's from 1961. It's at the same level. So this would probably be considered a binding precedent. The legal decision stated that while it is totally understandable that a college would have standards and rules regarding student behavior, those rules must be reasonable. Quote, in the case now before this court, it is clear that the maintenance of order and discipline of the students attending Troy State College had nothing to do with the rule that was invoked against Dickey. Dickey had not interfered with the teacher's ability to teach. He had not caused a ruckus, nothing. There was no such thing. So his attorney was claiming that it almost seemed like retaliation in a way. President Adams testified that the reason for the rule was that a newspaper could not criticize its owners, and in the case of a state institution, the owners were to be considered as the governor and the members of the legislature. Troy State College was ordered to reinstate Dickey as a student and pay all of his legal expenses. This case was litigated by Morris Dees, the founder of Montgomery's Southern Poverty Law Center. I want to take you back to Neer v. Minnesota and explain to you that you would have to go back to the we had the First Amendment first, and then we went back and said people can speak, except they can't speak out against any elected officials. And 3 years after that, then they just dropped that, and they were okay with the First Amendment. So on 12, I get into this unfortunate episode that happened recently. For years, Morris Dees was revered all over the country by everyone interested in justice and the First Amendment. Dees even came to Troy's campus a couple of years ago, I think in 2018, to address anyone on campus and in the community who wanted to attend. He was my hero. I thought so much about this man. For him to have started this organization, number one, then to have stayed with it all these years, 50 years, and done good things. He's responsible for taking the Ku Klux Klan off the street. A lawsuit of his did the most against the Ku Klux Klan that anyone had ever done before. I am not saying this man has not done wonderful things, but let me get into this. I even got his autograph on a copy of one of his books. Unfortunately, shortly after his speech at Troy, some issues concerning D's at the Southern Poverty Law Center came to greater light. There had been rumors. There had been rumors of malfeasance over his 50 years at the SPLC, but someone finally took a very careful look at his performance there. After the investigation, Dees was fired from the foundation that he began. He had been embezzling millions of dollars over the years and had been involved in some sexual scandals. He had been embezzling this money and sending it overseas and hiding it in funds that nobody in America could gain access to. So the story came out in 2019. I believe it was in early March of 2019 that Mr. Dees was finally fired after 50 years. So here's Dr. Sarapin's sermon for the day. I don't mean it to sound like a sermon, but I've been in this world a lot longer than you, and I feel it necessary to share with you, especially you being in the profession that you want to be in. Here's a lesson for all of us. We put people on pedestals and we idolize them, and then we expect them not to change. We throw all this admiration at them. It's like being fans, like being a fan club of a star. Some people can withstand all the fame, but some people go off the rails and begin to believe their own publicity. We learned about some people who had things going their way and they were talented too. However, they began to believe they could do just about anything they wanted and people would still love them. Think about all of the football coaches. When I say this, I'm referring to the people we learned about when we wrote our essays on plagiarism. Think about all of the football coaches who have fallen, all the politicians and elected officials, all the preachers, all the people that we put a lot of faith in. We hold them high. We respect them. We revere them, almost like little gods. Everyone must be held to account, and the job of journalists is to hold them to account. You are supposed to report malfeasance in office. That's one of your duties as a journalist. Do not become blinded by the light of fame that some people radiate. It's easy. It's easy to become entranced by it. So I'm going to read, this is the last little bit about Dickey v. Troy, also from the actual files from the trial. Quote, "A state cannot force a college student to forfeit his constitutionally protected right of freedom of expression as a condition to his attending a state-supported institution. State school officials cannot infringe on their students' right of free and unrestricted expression as guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States, where the exercise of such right does not, quote, materially and substantially interfere with requirements of appropriate discipline in the operation of the school." That comes from Burnside v. Byers. The defendants in this case cannot punish Gary Clinton Dickey for his exercise of this constitutionally guaranteed right by cloaking his expulsion or suspension in the robe of insubordination. The attempt to characterize Dickey's conduct and the basis for their action in expelling him as insubordination, requiring rather severe disciplinary action, does not disguise the basic fact that Dickey was expelled from Troy State College for exercising his constitutionally guaranteed right of academic and/or political expression. I'm glad that this case comes when it did. That's kind of the beginning of a lot of cases we're going to be talking about, but its similarity to Neer v. Minnesota is striking. It's striking in that people, before they do something like this, don't pull a lawyer aside and say, okay, we're expelling this guy. They should have pulled in their attorneys and said, can we do this without any risk of Dickey coming back and suing us? It amazes me how many times people continue to violate people's rights, the same rights, over and over and over again. But let me tell you, this is part of your job. If you go into any sort of investigative reporting, you must report everything. The bad things that people do and the good things that people do. It would be nice to have all good news, wouldn't it? Especially at this time of our lives, this pandemic era we're in. But we have to tell it all. So I just thought this would be a good lesson for everybody.